We are officially starting. So welcome everyone to today's event, BRM event. We're excited to bring back Jeff Warren, president of the Barclay Consulting Group. You might remember him sharing his expertise on design thinking. And if you're at EDUCAUSE last year, you may have attended the design thinking pre-conference session that he hosted, and I helped out. So we're very glad to have him return as a guest speaker. But today he's going to be talking about BRM practice. Along with Jeff is another frequent guest speaker and a popular guest of the ITSM CG, Leanne McGovern, with Purdue University. If you missed any of our sessions, check out the ITSM website for past recordings. I'm going to go ahead and pop the link in the chat so you can access that link. There you go. Joining Jeff and Lorraine today is Amy Hernandez from NYU and Deb Witten from Northern Arizona University, and I'll let them introduce themselves more as we get into the presentation. The overview of the presentation today, we've got a lot to cover, so we're going to save questions at the end. The presentation is going to last anywhere between 40 and 45 minutes. We will leave time left for Q&A. If you're going to ask a question, please pop them in the Q&A. You can pop them in at any time, but we'll get to them at the end. Use the chat to talk to each other. We encourage conversation, the best way to learn and network with each other. So I highly encourage you to use the chat to talk to each other. If you do have a question for a specific panelist, just put their name in there so I know who to address. Also, if you do want to ask a question, use the raise hand feature and I will take you off of mute. But once you're done, if you put yourself back on mute, we'd appreciate it. The webinar is being recorded and will be available on the EDUCAUSE ITSM website within 5 business days. Amy, looks like you have your hand up. Practicing the hand up feature?
Yes, absolutely. I just want to make sure that you've spotlighted the interpreters.
Oh, yes. We have 2 interpreters today. The transcripts are going to be available as well as part of the recording, as well as a chat log. So, all right. Without further ado, I will turn it over to Jeff.
Well, thank you, Mitch, and good morning, everyone. And I say good morning because, as Mitch mentioned, I am in New Zealand right now, and you can see behind me it's 5 o'clock in the morning. So I hope you're all having a wonderful day. And welcome to the webinar on BRM in higher education. BRM is a topic.
Jeff,
yeah.
I'm so sorry to interrupt. The deaf attendees cannot see us, so.
So enable your view. So there's different views you can use. You might probably use the speaker or gallery view.
Could you possibly spotlight Aaron Halleck and myself, Aaron Schneider?
If there's a way to do that in Zoom, I don't know how to do that.
Unfortunately, because we're in webinar mode, the deaf attendees do not have the ability to switch to gallery view.
Let me see what I can do, and then. But I don't want to stop the presentation for that. But let me try to figure it out and see if I can get that to work.
Okay, just so you know, they don't have access to the presentation.
Yeah, if there's a spotlight mode in Zoom, I'll try to figure that out. But I've never used it before, so.
Are we waiting, or should I continue?
Please continue, Jeff.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that. So welcome to the conversation around BRM and higher education. I work with many organizations in many industries around BRM, and it is an area I'm very passionate about, and an area that can make an incredible impact to organizations. It's also an area that is very misunderstood. And I want to just start off when we talk about the impact to IT organizations and to higher education institutions with a quote from Henry Ford. If you always do what you always did, you'll always get what you always got. I'm an IT lifer, and I know where IT was when I started long ago. And sadly, even though the technologies have changed and some of the tactics have changed, we're still operating in many cases the way we did 30, 40 years ago. And we expect different results, but the world has changed. IT is no longer a back office organization. IT has to be on the forefront of enabling and driving change in organizations to the benefit of business partners. And if we wanted to take a little bit of a look at where this all started and where it's going, when you look back at the 1970s, IT was called data processing, really, because that's its job. It had this big monolithic mainframe computers and huge data centers, and its job was to process data. So its focus was more on data. In the 90s, it became MIS, Management Information Systems. So it grew a little bit away from data, and it was more around management and information systems. But the focus still was on information, data, and computers. And then in the 2000s, it became IT, information technology. Information was everywhere, and it was focused on the technology. When we look on the business side, and when I say business, I'm talking about your faculty, your administrators, your schools. But when we look on the business side, well, their focus in the 70s was on students. It was on getting students to come to the university, giving them a proper education, attracting faculty, and so on. In the 90s, they had a student focus where they were focused on faculty and education and giving them experience. And that transitioned into the 2000s into a student focus. So one of the problems that we have here is that everyone was focused on the students when we were talking about the business side, and yet we were still focused on IT. And one of the biggest challenges that we had is that there's this huge gap. IT was operating in parallel to the business partners that we had, to the schools, the administrators, and the faculty. And that's not a good place for IT to be, because while we were thinking about data and technology and servers and networks and everything like that, this is what an education leader was thinking about. How do I create a 21st century learning experience for my students? How can we improve the bottom line? How can we increase fundraising at our university? And so on and so forth. And there may be many more questions, I'm certain there are, to what the education leader perspective was, regardless of what that position was in the university. That's what they were thinking about. And all they really care about from IT is, what can we do to help them meet these goals? That's their focus. They don't really care that we upgraded the network or that we moved into a new version of Microsoft Office. They want to know, what's in it for me? What am I getting out of this? And how are you going to help me meet these goals? And one of the disconnects between IT and business organizations across industries is we seem to focus more on the technology and not on the experience and the growth. And that's one of the biggest challenges we have. It's a great quote from Edie Weiner, who's a futurist at a company called Future Hunters. This concept of educated incapacity, knowing so much about what you know that you lose sight of what is possible. And sometimes that happens with IT, where we get so focused on technology, so focused on what we do, that we lose sight of the possibilities that it has and the impact that it can make. Because realistically, this is what it should have looked like over the last 40 years or so. Slowly but surely, we should have been bringing those arrows, those lines together. And those gaps that you see should have been decreasing. And the group that does that, the group that pulls those lines together, not solely, but primarily, is the BRM group. When I've seen very high fashion, high functioning BRM teams, this is what they do for their organizations. They don't transform IT, but they enable that transformation to happen, and they build these close bonds and relationships with their business partners. So what does BRM do? You hear all of these discussions and these conversations, and the word I hear a lot, which should be stricken from everybody's vocabulary, is liaison. BRMs are not liaisons. If you want a liaison between IT and your business partners, whomever they may be, hire a clerk and put them in as a liaison, so you have somebody that can have a conversation and take requests. BRM is a strategic organization, and it's supposed to do much more than that. So here's a definition, an elevator speech to consider. BRM is a business-focused organization within IT that combines strategic vision with action to deliver results that drive growth, increase effectiveness, and improve business performance. So it's both of these things. It's all of these things, not both of these things. It is a business-focused organization within IT. This is not a technical group. Do they need to know technology? Absolutely they do, but it is a business-focused organization. Their primary focus and the place they spend the most time is with your business partners. And again, when I say business partners, I'm talking about faculty, I'm talking about administrators, I'm talking about different people in higher education who are not part of IT. They combine strategic vision. This is not an operational or tactical group. This is a group that is focused on influencing and driving strategies on both the IT and business side. They don't write the strategies. That's where you have specialists in IT to drive that vision and identify the direction. but they have such an impact because they understand business direction, business performance, needs, challenges, opportunities that they can bring back to IT. So IT strategy is now marching in step with where the business is going. And at the same time, they can bring to the business partners some of the great things that are happening in the technology world. And the last piece is that we talk about growth, effectiveness, and performance. That's what this is about. This is about impact. This is not about projects and tasks. This is about really creating an impactful version of IT. Steve Jobs, you've got to start with the customer experience and work back toward the technology, not the other way around. The reality is that most IT organizations start with the technology. When we hear about a problem, we think of a technology solution. When we find an opportunity, we think about how we can drive technology. What BRMs do and what many in IT do when you have a strong and a highly functioning BRM team is you start thinking about the customer experience, thinking about the business partner's perspective first, and then figure out how technology can help. And they don't lead with the technology all of the time. So ultimately, what does BRM do for an organization? Well, on the bottom part of this, it uses strategic influence with business partners so IT has more involvement. Let me just fill this out because obviously I screwed up the builds on that one. But it's talking about how it expands influence. It uses its influence with business partners so IT has more involvement and effect on business performance. BRMs uncover opportunity because they spend most of their time with the business partners, because they know about business and technology. They can help identify opportunities where technology can help business partners increase efficiency, drive growth, reduce costs in areas that the business partner doesn't even see or know. And there are also areas that IT can't see because IT typically is too busy trying to fulfill a lot of the requests that come their way. So BRMs are consultants of sorts that can uncover opportunities to make higher education much more efficient, effective, and help drive growth. BRMs help improve alignment. They impact the organization by creating meaningful and strategic partnership between business and IT. And this is not cliche. We always talk about having strong partnerships or we have good relationships, and those are fine. It's great that you do, and I would imagine most of you do, whatever IT organizations you work for, that you have good relationships with your business partners, in some cases strong relationships. The question is, are they really meaningful? In other words, are you doing things that are driving the agenda for the business partners? Are they doing things that are influencing the way you act? And do you have a strategic partnership with them? Or is it more operational about, let's make sure we keep the lights on and keep things running? There's nothing wrong with that. It's just that to really advance things, the goal of having a strategic and meaningful partnership is really much more important. And this is what BRM helps. BRMs empower leadership. They educate and empower business partners in areas that they may not be aware of, not because they have to know all of these technologies, but because they're aware of what's happening in the technology industry, some trends that are happening in higher education with competing universities or other universities in other parts of the world or the country. And you're empowering them with this information so they can make better decisions. And not everything on IT, but the things that are important to them. And they inform strategies, as I talked about before. They inform the IT strategy on what's happening on the business side and the direction that the business is heading in, and they do the opposite. They inform the business of where IT is investing and the things IT is doing so they can change their strategy. So they're in the position to inform both of them. But as important as it is for what BRM does for an organization, it's almost equally as important what BRMs don't do. And this is where I see this happen very often. They are not project managers or business analysts. They do not serve as the service desk or IT help desk. They don't chase down tickets. They don't replace the current intake process. They don't develop, test, design, or install software, and they don't write technical or functional specs. There are some pretty talented and very good people who do this in IT, and that is their jobs. But in many organizations, where one of these areas may be lacking resources or talent, BRMs are asked to fill in. And if BRMs are doing these things, who's doing what BRMs are supposed to do, which usually is no one. So the more we can keep BRMs to do their jobs and the more we can empower people in IT to do their jobs, the better off we are. Once BRMs start getting into these areas, people start questioning the value or need for BRM, which is where that term liaison starts coming about, because you're just doing an extension of IT. So your BRMs, when you're building these programs out, really think about not having them in any of these areas because it's not a good place for them to be. But the high-performing BRM really focuses on impact. So they don't operate as the tactical / operational responder. They're not just reactive, working on tactical and operational things that keep the lights on with all of the words that you see there. Instead, they're really more of an impactful leader, right? They're more of an influencer, a strategist, a collaborator, consultant, advisor, communicator. They're all of the things on the right side, not instantly out of the box, but as time goes on and you develop the program to be able to do that. BRM, streamline communication and connection with partners. This is always an interesting conversation if we weren't doing a one-sided webinar. We look at IT and it typically can look like this. It can look like we're many-to-many conversations. People are talking to each other. Nobody's really sure of who does what. Many people are involved, not necessarily talking to each other on the IT side. So there's multiple conversations on the same topic with a business partner. Business partners get frustrated. They go around everybody. They call the CIO. We have fragmented dialogue, confused communications, delayed response. When we get to BRM, it looks a whole lot cleaner. And I want to be really careful before I go on here. This does not suggest that everything goes through BRM. You notice the two circles on the right and the left of that BRM box? BRM engages with business partners and is one place the strategic advisor, the main strategic partner for the business partner, to be able to have those conversations. So it is the go-to. As far as the business partner is concerned, this is the IT leader that I deal with. But they are not the only ones that talk to business partners. I used to run application development in a large organization, and I would not have wanted anybody to talk to business partners on my behalf. So they enable conversations, they facilitate conversations, they bring people in when they see opportunities. So the conversations that people are having in application development, infrastructure, architecture, et cetera, are still happening with business partners, but they're more strategic, they're more focused on driving growth, and they're not just constant meetings about status and updates that frustrate everybody on both sides. So the reality is BRM is here to complement IT, not replace it. One of the frequent things I hear about organizations that build BRM programs is, oh no, we can't do that. I own the customer. Well, nobody owns the customer, right? They actually, the customer being the business partner, of course, nobody owns them. But you want to handle them in a way that makes the most sense, as if your department was hired as a consulting company. Every organization that deals with IT in your company or organization has a strategic account advisor of some sort that is the main person that deals with it. And that person brings people in from the technical side. And that's what BRM really does. It doesn't replace what you do in IT, it complements it. High-performing BRMs focus more on growth and transformation. They spend most of their time here. They're focusing on growing the organization and transforming the organization and not on running the organization. That doesn't mean that they say, well, I don't do anything around keeping the lights on. I don't do any operational things. At times, you need to roll up your sleeves and get involved. But most importantly, you are responsible for the whole package when you're a BRM with your business partner. So you have to keep your eyes on the run part, but BRMs don't really get directly involved. It's not their focus. But they work with IT to make sure, obviously, that the keeping the lights on is happening and that those things are important. And capabilities evolve over time when we're talking about BRM. You don't start out as this high-functioning organization. Most organizations, when you see this progression here, most organizations are really in this spot. Many, unfortunately, are in this, which is what they really need to get out of. But a lot of organizations I talk to are right about here. Right? This level 2, this partner, we're just connecting with them. Well, you don't just say, okay, well, we're going to start here at level 4. You can't do that. Even if you had the best trained organization, you have to get the confidence of your business partner. You have to build a meaningful relationship with them, not just a relationship. And you have to show the impact that you can make to them. And you also have to show, when you're a high-performing BRM team, that you're focused on them, the WIFM, what's in it for me, that you're able to give them what they need, you're able to focus on what they need, and you're able to make sure that IT is much more connected with them. Because as those capabilities over time increase, the impact to business performance is immense. It really can make a tremendous difference with all of the things that you see here. And are the BRMs responsible for every one of these things here? No, IT is. Higher levels of success for business initiatives aren't happening because the BRM did it. higher levels of success for business initiatives are happening because IT understood what was supposed to happen, coordinated well with the business partner, focused on their needs rather than just, we know what you want. And IT delivered an amazing product and got the connection and notoriety for it. So all of the things that are here are what the benefits that you get from a BRM program. And they all, I've seen them happen, but BRM is not something that you just do. You don't just start doing it, hire a person and say, go do it. It is an art form, and it needs training. It needs education. It needs strategy. It is not a traditional construct within IT. We have our application development areas, our infrastructure, architecture, security that have been around forever. BRM is relatively new, maybe 10 years old or so. And if you don't define what your BRM program does, where it starts, where it stops, how it's going to work, what it's going to impact, how it works with IT, if you don't have a vision and a strategy, it usually goes awry because nobody on the IT side knows how to use this team and ends up going around them or conflicting with them. And even worse, your business partners don't know why you're there and what you're supposed to do. So they look at you as basically an extension of the service desk. So what we're going to do now is transition away from me babbling on, and we're going to talk to three people who are doing this. And the way we constructed this webinar was to give you three different views into BRM. We are going to start with Amy Hernandez from New York University, who's going to talk about the early stages of building a program, and then transition to Deborah Witten at Northern Arizona University, who's a little bit more advanced in that, has done this before and is thinking and is really more progressed at Northern Arizona in putting this together. And then finish this with Leanne McGovern from Purdue University, who's been doing this a while and has a very high functioning BRM team. So let me turn it over to Ms. Amy Hernandez, my friend from New York University.
Thank you very much, Jeff. Hello, everyone. My name is Amy Hernandez, and I am the Assistant Director of IT Partnerships at New York University. And as Jeff mentioned, we are just getting started on this BRM journey. We bought our ticket, we packed our bags, but we're still at the lounge, right? Having drinks with everybody, talking about what it is that BRM is going to look like at NYU. Because NYU is so big, IT at NYU is highly federated. Not only do we have a global university CIO, but we have an array of IT leadership across the university doing the work of our CIO and our CISO and heading IT teams across our university. In its current definition, my role strives for strategic alignment between central IT and these distributed teams. How big is NYU, you ask? Well, let's take a look at some numbers. So globally, we have not one degree granting campus, we have three. New York, Shanghai, Abu Dhabi. We have 18 schools and institutes in New York City alone and 12 global sites. My kid is actually heading over to NYU Madrid in the fall. We'll see how that goes. At this point, at NYU, a student doesn't even have to start in New York in order to be called an NYU student. That's how large we've become. We have about over 1,000 technology professionals, 60,000 students. And just to give you an idea of that number, the Ivy Uptown, who shall not be named, has 30,000 students. Jeff could tell you the name if he wants. We have over 5,000 faculty, all of who are supported by distributed IT teams, over 22,000 administrators and staff in New York City, and 500,000 plus alumni all over the world. NYU IT manages infrastructure in 200 buildings, which covers about 15 million square feet of leased or owned space in Brooklyn and New York City. Jeff? This is a very busy slide, and I'm not going to go into it too deeply, but what I wanted to show you was how NYU IT's core beliefs, our mission, our vision, and strategy scream BRM. And so it's really what's influencing our journey and getting on it and starting to work on it collaboratively across all of the IT teams at the university. We have people at the heart of everything we do. We have teams and partnerships work. We share information. We do all of these things in support of a people-centric culture in order to advance teaching and learning and research, right? BRM all over. So, Jeff, as I think about the BRM journey that we are about to embark on, I think about keeping it extremely simple, just because nothing at NYU can be complicated. Otherwise, it just doesn't go, it doesn't get any inertia. So keeping it simple, leveraging people who are already doing the work of BRM, but are not calling it BRM work. We want to standardize around the how and the why of relationship management so that we can proliferate that BRM program across the university in a consistent way. We want to talk about metrics, right? So that they can help tell the BRM at IT at NYU story, so that people can start noticing the impact of the work that we are doing. Yeah. And of course, there are going to be challenges. The most visible one is there are no immediate plans for increasing headcount. But even beyond that, for those people that do see the light, there is the perception that BRM skills and mindset should already be natural to the people that are doing IT at NYU. For those that do see the light, they're concerned about bandwidth. We are a very stretched out IT team. How can a person possibly have one more capability that they have to have responsibility over? And to top it all off, right? Is there even a problem? Isn't Amy doing a great job? So really, why are we doing this? Jeff? The bottom line is we've got to do it, because obviously one person doesn't scale for a university of our size if we want to continue aligning strategically to support the university on its technology initiatives, especially with, some of the challenges with funding that we're all, going through at the moment. But what I'm thinking about is, how do I keep my mind on that success, that future success? NYU has a beautiful motto, and I get all emotional when I think about it, because it has two very, very powerful words: persistence and perseverance, right? There is no giving up. There is no failure. There is just persistence and perseverance. So we got to stay curious. We have to keep understanding what we don't know, got to really keep focus on what that future state could look like for all of us at IT at NYU. And then we have to take some baby steps, right? The most important thing that I'm focusing on, in the next year is conducting relationship mapping exercises. Who is who works with them? Why do we work with them? What's the purpose of the work we do? And so on and so forth. I want to really define simple metrics so that we're really thinking analytically about, sort of what impact we are producing for everyone. And I want us to keep our minds on continuous improvement, so that we don't get stuck anywhere as we continue on this journey. Lastly, by intentionally focusing on BRM, I think that we will build curiosity and interest. Like, what else can we do with this? The energy that is created by this interest will fuel our efforts and motivate us to keep changing the NYU mindset, one relationship at a time. I'm going to pass it on to my colleague, Deborah Witten from Northern Arizona University.
Okay, thank you, Amy. Hello, everyone. I'm Deb Witten from NAU, and I'm the Assistant Vice President for Technology Services and Planning. I have responsibility for desktop support and classroom technology support and the IT service desk, and some enterprise services like project management, business analysis, service management desk, and then some training development and technology adoption folks. So our stakeholders in my group are all of the faculty, staff, and students at NAU, at the university. Jeff? So BRM started for me actually in another place at another institution, and I was in another role. And I was part of a customer support IT organization, and a reorganization across all of the campuses resulted in consolidating IT support teams into one single team, with the goal being to standardize and streamline the end user experience for students who were taking classes on more than one campus and faculty that were teaching classes on more than one campus. So within my unit, I wanted to create this role. We had service agreements in place with a lot of academic and business units as well. So we charged money for desktop support services and classroom support services to some of the academic and administrative departments. So managing all of those service agreements and the relationships with those end user departments and the money flowing in and out was a challenge. And so with my peers, I created a role. We called it a client relationship manager. This was over 10 years ago. I don't know how popular the BRM title was at the time, but I pulled together job descriptions from everybody I knew in EDUCAUSE to who had someone in a role like this. And the idea was similar to the BRM function, where this client relationship manager would be the partner broker to the stakeholder units. The position was filled internally by a very qualified applicant, and the role was dedicated to serving all of the stakeholder areas. Jeff? So there were some lessons that we learned from that experience that I wanted to share with you here. That I'm taking forward in my role at NAU, and will keep in mind as we go forward and try to define the BRM role and function. Training was clearly important, I think, for all of the customer service units to drive the team toward a true service culture, not just providing a service, not just taking money for services we provide and not just taking tickets, but literally driving a true service culture and always thinking about how we can help those stakeholder areas get better and innovate. More than just billing and providing services, we really wanted to be a true business partner to those areas. And I think we were in many cases, but not necessarily in all cases with all stakeholder areas. Also focusing on the empathy, and I think Jeff mentioned that earlier as part of the BRM methodology, is really understanding and learning what the stakeholder or the customer area does, understanding their operation, understanding their vision, really putting yourself in their shoes and understanding what they do, I think is really, really super important. And being recognized as a valued, trusted partner, not just a service partner, but a real strategic partner to the stakeholder area. I would have liked to have seen more than that. And I should have developed a strategic vision for this role long-term, and didn't do that, and wish we had done that. One person is clearly not enough to do this job, to support all of your stakeholder, academic, and business units. It really does need to be a team. But we started out with a person, and eventually we kind of grew a couple more positions into that area over time. And I wish we would have done a lot more immersion activity up front in the business units, in the academic and the administrative units, really understanding what they do, more than just providing a service, right? So we don't just run to a classroom and change out the technology, but understanding how they're using it and what their academic challenges are from a technology perspective would have put us in more of a partnership relationship with them, as opposed to just simply a service provider. And then putting continuous improvement out in front all the time is really a key characteristic for this particular job. And you need a lot of clarity around the role, and Jeff talked about that too earlier. You really need to understand what this person or this job does and what it doesn't do, and how it's going to interact with all of the other areas in the IT organization. Jeff? Thank you. So why do I think I need a particular role like this, like a BRM at NAU? And it's because I want someone in that partnership role that can work with our academic and business units, the ones we support in an IT organization, the units we support, but to help them plan, prioritize, and seek out opportunities to innovate and improve their processes and their businesses. And I want somebody to be that consultant and that advisor to work with them, to be a valued resource to them. And it needs to be a full-time and a dedicated person. So we have people that do various parts of these types of things, but not dedicated full-time person in this business relationship management role. So that's really what I'm looking to do here. And I know BRM has been successful in higher education. You're going to hear Leanne from Purdue in a few minutes talking about a very mature program that they've been growing. And I know other higher education institutions are doing this. This role is successful out in various types of industries. It's a little newer in the higher education arena, but I think many of us, I've been seeing in some of the constituent community email exchanges that many people are really going down this path and really looking at business relationship management as a role within your institution. So again, I pulled job descriptions together from everybody I know that has a business relationship management role. Pulled that together and trying to figure out right now where this role fits in our organization. So as I said, some people are already doing parts of this. We need a lot of buy-in from the IT teams and the stakeholder units. So I'm trying to socialize the job. We have a lot of resource constraints, just like everyone else does. So wherever we put this role, it's going to take away from some other area. That's going to be one of my challenges. And I'm going to need to do a lot of justification. Okay, one more, Jeff, thank you. So what this is going to look like for us going forward at NAU is I'm hoping to pilot this position, this role, with a person in a few key stakeholder areas where we already have good relationships with the stakeholder areas. To pilot the role, as I said, we've got the job description. Train the team. I want to train as many people on my team as possible about this role and what it does and what it doesn't do, to understand the job and to understand the clarity around it. So the 3-day high-performing BRM workshop I have scheduled for September. It's going to be on site at our campus. It's an excellent workshop. Jeff Warren teaches it, and we're going to follow that with a 1-day overview for executives. My boss, stakeholders in our academic and business areas are going to be sitting in on that as well. And then I'll be socializing this role and discussing the role with the stakeholder areas and how it will interact with IT and with all of the business units. There will be some governance framework we'll need to put around this. And then last, we'll be setting performance expectations and monitoring progress and measuring and hopefully promoting a lot of success out of this position. So that's my story. Thank you. And I'm going to let Leanne conclude for us now.
So good morning, good afternoon, good evening from Purdue University. And as I thought about this, what I thought I would do, or what I'm going to do, is actually give you some key strategic decisions that either I made or we made as a team that has helped us continue to be successful with our BRM program. So one of the first things that we have clarity around, which I think is really important, is who our partners are. So we are located, our BRM team is at the College of Agriculture, and therefore our faculty, our College of Agriculture faculty, are actually our business partners. And then our technical partners are campus-wide. I like to refer to it everything from enterprise or core IT to emerging tech that's actually being built in other colleges like engineering. So we're currently at about 55 technical partners across campus, and that continues to grow as we discover more in that emerging tech space. The other thing that we have been very clear on from day one, and make sure we tie everything to this, is really the directive or our purpose. And that is to bring the full potential, which is really that value statement of Purdue's tech directly to the faculty. Faculty need to spend time on teaching, research, and engagement instead of navigating and connecting to those technical partners around campus. That is the job of the BRM. And the other thing that we have gotten really good at is being able to identify our value proposition. Where do we have that unique position, the ability to go in. So often in these places, there's nobody else, especially from our from IT, even with our own organizations, because there just isn't the resources. And so with BRM, we've been able to identify those early adopters. We can actually get new faculty into working with technical partners faster. We've actually streamlined some data deliverables, and we've even gone as far as working with our entrepreneurship and commercialization groups in the Purdue Research Foundation to help get faculty to them more quickly to work on future startups. Jeff? Okay, so Jeff's working the slide. So this I built it in animation, with animations. Just hang with us. So this is a timeline. This is something new. And I just thought it might be helpful for people, especially as you're starting out. It's kind of one of those don't give up. This does take some time, but also we made some very strategic decisions, mostly as a team, but yet it has moved us forward. So One of the first things when we first started, we were really spending a lot of time with IT, focused on the technical partners. We made that switch May 1st. That hit to our business. So really spending time in the faculty. Technical partners are still important. They're really part of that kind of triangle. We look at it as an inverted triangle. But we really have to know not only what's going on in the College of Agriculture, but what's also happening with the faculty that we work with. Then with that move, what we also really focused on is moving from operational to that strategic. And that also was driven by moving to the business, being more business focused. When we were more IT focused, we were focusing on things like where are there computers in the ordering process. There was some things with research, computing, so on and so forth. But once we moved to those, really working with our faculty, we naturally progressed more to a strategic space and moving on, because the core IT is still important, but also looking for that emerging tech. And then we made another very, very important strategic decision in early 2019, and that was starting to work in the discovery space. Our goal here at Purdue University is try to stay ahead of ag tech and digital agriculture trends. And by doing so, we can help not only our technical partners, but definitely our faculty as they're beginning to really push the envelope in the ag tech space. Ideation, in the beginning, we were really looking at break fix. We were still trying to find our way. Again, as we moved more towards that business focus space, we then became very comfortable in looking for those ideas and opportunities. One of the commitments that we have to our technical partners is to get them closer to the idea, to help architects, so on and so forth. But even in this space, we try to get even out in front of ideation. Our goal is to really get to our faculty or have those relationships so that they're comfortable enough with saying, I woke up this morning and I'm wondering if this is even reality. And that's kind of the fun part of the job. And the last thing I wanted to talk about in this slide that has really, really helped us is you have to be nimble. If you're going to stay as a static BRM team, you're going to struggle. And especially with us, the technology is constantly changing, new IoT devices, so on and so forth. So as you can see here, when in the very beginning, we started more of a CRM approach, moved into the BRM after we found the institute, the BRM Institute. Then we had to come up with a new playbook and how we were going to interact with our partners during COVID and remote. As we came out, again, we had to switch. And right now, I have two BRMs, Mark Sullivan and Brandon Reese. They're currently working on updating our approach and playbook for what it means in 2023 as most things are coming back to place, coming back to campus. And what does that mean? And I don't know how long we're going to be able to utilize that playbook. It might be a year, 2 years, but we have to stay nimble. We have to move with the college and with the university and to stay on top of it. Okay, Jeff. So what I'm going to do is give you a quick example of really working with faculty. So this is one of the faculty members. He does work with cover crops. This project started basically with a conversation in the field with him. He had just inherited a plot. This is also really important, I think, with BRMs, is you've got to get really good at understanding benefits versus costs and the value. So I think in IT, we can talk a lot of times about benefits. It's faster this, it's slower this, it's smaller, so on and so forth, but to really understand the costs. And in this case, IT partners did not think that he would have the money available to buy the IoT sensors that he wanted. As a BRM, having those conversations and really digging in, what I understood was his costs. He really needed a solution that was sustainable, but also scalable, because he wanted to move from 4 plots to multi-state. Okay, Jeff? And so once we were able to deliver that, or the technical partners were able to deliver that, he went out and found funding for those sensors, because this is what he really wanted. Jeff? Hit it again. There should be another slide in there. And if not, that's okay. No, go back. So what he really wanted was that data pipeline, and that's what our technical partners were able to deliver. And what we now have, or what he is now part of, is one of the world's first IoT-focused nitrogen sensor networks, which is actually pretty amazing. And not only did he invest in the sensors there, he was because we were able to, or the technical partners were able to deliver on what was needed. We also have these sensors set up in other states. Okay, go ahead. So just a couple things. I think the other thing we found that was critical was that we had to be able to talk about the impact. And it's not the, well, it's the BRM impact. It's really about the impact on Purdue agriculture and the research and teaching and extension items going on. So here's just a small sampling. So these are use cases that we help provide. And in the meantime, what we have built here is actually a large research data ecosystem. The first 3 months, it had over 18 billion data points coming in from a farm off campus. Really one of the first, at least in the Northwest. Okay, Jeff. Also the IoT pipeline, when they started talking about this pipeline, they actually looked towards BRM to go find the use cases. The agronomy one we just talked about, we have air sensors, moisture sensors, which have been really critical for faculty in biochem. And then finally, as I talked earlier, we're looking for those now faculty to faculty partnerships. It's partnerships with ECN, it's partnerships with Polytechnic, and sometimes even faculty within the College of Agriculture. And we've been able to both identify, navigate, and connect, and then help build those strategic partnerships. Jeff, it's all to you.
Excellent. Thank you, Leanne. And I think what you see is it was a great progression. We kind of dreamt this up as we were putting this together, but to see somebody who's just starting out, somebody that's kind of midway and is really getting, has experience in it, somebody that's doing this really, really well. And some of you can relate to one or all of them, but it is a progression. And I think you got a good glimpse into some history there, but BRM can be incredibly impactful. And there's a lot of reasons why it could have some challenges. And, you know, we tend to think of the negative a lot, unfortunately, in IT about the things that happen. There's a great quote from Mark Twain. You know, if you think you can, you can. If you think you can't, you're right. And so if all of the things we talked about, this is not concept or theory. These are actual people that you heard who have done this before or are about to do it or doing it. And there are hundreds and thousands of installations of BRM, many of which are growing, some of which are really high performing. So this is not a question of whether it will work or not. It's a question of how you go about doing that. So I'm not going to go through these in the interest of time, but we will make this presentation available. You know, this is a presentation I did at one of the BRM Connect conferences. By the way, there's one coming up in Portland in October, which is wonderful for all of BRM, the BRM Institute puts together for BRMs to get together. And I did a presentation years ago about these are the top 10 reasons why they fail. And one of the areas that's a huge focus is in the talent development. We don't train BRMs to do what we need them to do. We have this great vision for what we want to do, and then we give them just the same training. And Deborah mentioned this before. There's a class out there called the High Performing BRM right now. It's a class I developed to teach people how to do BRM and to do it at a high level. It is not just for existing BRMs and like a graduate class. It is for that, but it's also for people just starting out to figure out, how do I do this? What are the things I should be thinking about, and where should the program go? What can BRM do? It opens up people to understand what great looks like. And when you look at the different topics that we cover in the class, you'll see that it's quite different from anything else that that you'll see for the trainings. Yes, BRM Institute has some certifications as well that you can look at. This class really teaches you how to do it. It teaches you what great looks like, and it teaches you how to get there. And one of the things, so if you want to register for one of the classes, there is the link. And again, we'll make sure that we send this to you, contact any of us, or certainly we'll give you the presentation. We do virtual classes that individuals can sign up all the time. We do group classes as well. And we're offering a discount for all of you that attended this webinar or anybody else using a code EDUCAUSE2023 to get a 10% discount off of that. So thank you all very much for your attention here. I hope you not only got a good glimpse for what BRM is and what it can do, but I think you also heard the passion in everybody's voice to understand how powerful it can be. It can be and should be one of the most impactful roles within an IT organization. And what it really does is it elevates the rest of IT to do what we really should be, because remember, that curve really should be going up to be at the same point where our business partners are. So with that said, Mitch, I'm going to turn it back to you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, panelists and Jeff, for the presentation. We have a few questions in the Q&A, so we'll jump into those. And then we've got someone that wants to ask a question live. So let's start with the first one from the anonymous attendee. What's an example of a week in the life for BRM in academic area, if you have one focusing on these stakeholders?
So I can take this one. I'm going to give you this week. So our Monday mornings are more administrative. We have team meetings. We like to review the calendar for the week for any opportunities to engage. We look at some of the strategic work that we are doing. For instance, right now, we're kind of working on that strategic playbook. What are new opportunities for engagement? And then we really start in. So heavy right now, we have new faculty coming in. We have some here in campus. So Mark and Brandon are meeting with those faculty, understanding what their academic outcomes are and where they may need assistance with the tech, but also where their research and teaching is going, that we may be able to find technical partners that will help with their success. Tuesday was a day at the Turf Center. Again, engaging with faculty, understanding what is going on in that science domain. Yesterday, we had some meetings, again, some more faculty. And then last night we were at Agronovus in Indianapolis, working with really that commercialization and entrepreneurship. I am in training today, but Mark and Brandon attended MIGS Field Day, again, working with faculty, especially when they're in their place. We can often hear those ideas and opportunities that we can follow up on. And then tomorrow we have a couple more events. Again, it's building those networks. It's in making introductions, it's that navigating and connecting, but also looking where the gaps are. Where do we find the gaps in the ag tech, digital ag space? Some of the gaps that our faculty need, and then looking for those. That's this week.
Busy week.
It has been a busy week.
All right, thanks, Leanne. Let me jump into Jay's question, then we'll get to Moshe on. So Jay's asking, I'd like to hear about how you track interactions with the faculty. So what do BRMs know before meeting with a particular faculty member, or do you track other IT members' interactions with faculty?
So again, I'll grab this one. We actually do use a CRM program. It's Zoho. It's our opportunity to not only track faculty, but also our technical partners and the technical capabilities across the campus. So we do a lot of research, especially before they come, but we try to reach out to them either before they start or within the first 2 to 3 weeks of their start, just to start having those conversations, and they end up knowing where they can go when they have those questions. Not, again, they're not the service desk questions, so on and so forth. We can help get them there in the beginning, but really trying to understand what they're hoping to accomplish, where the ideas are, let's say around the agriculture technology. So the IoT or Internet of Things, what are they thinking? Because what we found is 8 years ago, nobody was really talking about that. In the last 3 to 5 years, almost every faculty that walks in the door has some type of an IoT or digital agriculture need. And then it's getting them to the right person as quickly as possible, or the right technical partner as quickly as possible.
All right, thanks, Leanne. We're going to leave these last two questions. Sorry if we don't get to your questions, but we have these last two. So let's go ahead and jump to Mojgan with our question.
Thanks, Michelle. Thank you very much for the presentation and for sharing, first of all. For my question is, so we have senior leaders who report to our CIO, IT leaders, and I feel like they're doing what is being described here as BRM role. They have the relationship with the campus execs. They are very strategic. They co-lead executive governance, et cetera, et cetera. But at the same time, they manage large service areas and service owners who are also very strategic. So I'm trying to understand if this would be a separate BRM role outside of these kind of senior strategic leaders, and some of it seems like to be overlap, but I'm just wondering, it's a separate role than those?
Yeah, so let me address that, because it's really not unique to higher education. Many IT organizations have senior IT leaders that have similar, when they start out, similar responsibilities to what BRM does. And oftentimes when I go into organizations, I hear complaints from applications development leads, from infrastructure leads, architecture, that that's what I do. And the reality is that this is a false sense of security when you think that you can run applications development, as an example, and do what a BRM does, meaning all of the close relationships, truly spending time with the business partner, understanding wants, needs, challenges, seeing things from their perspective, and also seeing IT from the outside in to know how you can deliver those things, and do the application development job at the same time. You can't do both. And so typically what this means is again, these senior IT leaders, it comes down to identifying what is BRM at your organization, what does it do, where does it start, where does it stop, and how does it connect? And then figuring out how that gets woven into the fabric of IT, because it cannot be a role that has similar responsibilities, actions, et cetera, as other IT leaders. Because if you put yourself in the perspective of the business partner, what's going to happen is they're going to get very confused about who to talk to and who does what. It has to be clear for them. It has to be clear for IT. So there has to be a delineation of responsibilities and actions, but also synergies to talk about how they work together. So if you have an organization right now where senior IT leaders are doing a lot of BRM type work, and most organizations do before they have BRM, the realization has to be that they can't be doing it as effectively as a dedicated BRM would do. So therefore, how do we define what BRM does and also what those IT leaders do? And my advice usually is let BRM focus on the business partner, let them focus on being the consultant, the partner, the coach, et cetera, the strategic partner for the business leaders and the business partners in higher education. And as well, at the same time, let the people in IT focus on what they're supposed to focus on and do that well. And when you join those two things, it can be magical. But you use three letters that come into play here, and that is CIO. And it comes into play a couple of ways. Number one, the BRM is actually viewed as the CIO from the business partners. They're not the CIO, but that's the way they look at them, that you're the voice, the face of IT, and I need to know when I'm talking to you that you're going to influence decisions and make decisions and have that power, which also means your CIO has got to be on board with all of this. And it kind of starts there. On that list of the top 10 reasons why BRM programs fail, number one was management approval or involvement. And your CIO has to bless what BRM can do. And when you define it the right way, you're the CIO's best friend. And that then allows the cascade of events to make sure that we define what the senior leaders do and what BRM does. There are organizations that do this without a BRM program. They make their senior leaders do both. It's going to come at the expense of one or both of those things. So you really want to make sure that you start with your strategy and vision, excuse me, and then progress that through IT's operating model, and certainly through the CIO.
All right, well, thank you, Jeff. Everyone, we're right at time. Thank you for your presentation and your wisdom. You'll get a survey once I in the webinar here. Please take a moment to fill that out. It helps us to get better at this. Reminder that the transcripts, the recording will be available within 5 business days on the ITSM CG website, so be looking out for that. And finally, before I let you go, if you have an idea for a webinar or want to be featured as a guest, reach out to me. You have my contact information. Love to host you in your topic. So thank you, everyone, and have a great day, wherever you are in the world.
Thank you all. Thanks, Mitch.
Bye, everyone.